Hello. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time for those of you who may not feel quite as comfortable in After Effects yet and go through the interface in a little bit more detail with you all, just so in case you're feeling a little bit lost, we got you covered. So by now, you probably know this is how it looks when we open it at the beginning. And I want to walk you through compositions, and we'll do a little bit more alpha masking and things like that. But most importantly, what I like to do when I first start an After Effects project is make a file directory. So I will make a new folder typically, and I'll call this September 6th. And this is where I'm going to put all of my files that I'm going to work with. I can keep things in here and I'll know where my files are, especially in case any of them ever go missing. This is the best way to keep your files organized. So I could break this down even further if I wanted to. I could say footage, and I could take any video footage that I have in here. I can make another one that says assets, and maybe any Photoshop files go in here. And then I usually always make one that says renders, so I can put any renders that I have in here, and that's also something we'll take a look at today. So just keep that nice and organized. And I'll show you what happens if something goes missing. So in order to import, I'm going to be over here in my project panel. If I don't have this project panel, the best thing to do in any Adobe software is always go up to Window, and there's a Workspace panel. We can always reset our Workspace panel to get some of these windows back open. So over here, I just want to make sure that I can say reset all panels to save layout, or I can select one of the workspaces over here. I can also see other tabs that I have control of over here. Anyway, so to import, I'll go to File, Import, File, or I can just hit Command I. And I will go to September 6th. This is where my footage and my renders, or my footage and my assets are. So I'll import both of my pieces of footage, and I will also import that frog asset. So the material is here. It's all available to us, but let's say you decide to start reorganizing your file structure. So if I were to come over here and I was to actually change the location of this and put it on the desktop, I'm going to come over here, and now it's going to tell me that a file cannot be found. So we need to find the file, and so that's great if you know where that file is. And I know that I put it on my desktop. So what I can do is I can right click and say replace footage, file, and then I'll go to my desktop, find the file, and hit open. But generally I don't, and so now we have the file again, right? Generally I don't want to keep anything on my desktop, so I'm going to put that back in my footage folder. So it's missing again. We'll right click, replace footage, file, and go back here. There we go. So it's here again. Something that's kind of cool, that this doesn't work if you're missing any of your footage, it doesn't work. But if you go to if you have like footage down here or footage over here, we can right click on this and we can say reveal in Finder, and this will show you where you saved it. So see, it took me to my footage folder, if I had this open, reveal, reveal in Finder, there we go, it pops up. But sometimes over here, this panel starts to get really full if you're working with a lot of files. Another thing you can do is do right click, reveal, reveal layer source in project. And you see it selected it over here. So that's one way of working. So we've already talked a little bit about the 1920 by 1080 information up here in our selected panel. You can see this is 1280 by 720. That's 1920 by 1080. So we have to remember, especially when we're doing the tracking stuff, right? This stuff is important. Our composition has to match that size. Compositions are the main way that we work in After Effects. And you can make a new composition down here with this little icon. It says create new composition. You can also just come up to here to composition, new composition, or Command N. When we hit new composition, that's when we're able to set the parameters of our comp. And you can see this is the 1280 by 720. So this would match the one piece of footage that we have. So let's go ahead and select that. And we have 30 frames a second. That should probably be fine. And so this is the piece of footage that matches it. Looks like we stopped working for a second. That piece of footage, for some reason, just didn't seem like it wanted to work. It feels like it's going a little bit slow, maybe because of recording on Zoom and using After Effects. So instead, we're just going to use this other piece of footage. And you can tell what's going on here by, so this composition, remember it was 1280 by 720. And 1280 by 720, and here we can see that this piece of footage is larger than our composition just by the box that is here. So this gives a little opportunity to talk about how we could move this footage. If we come down here to the footage and we click on this little caret right here, click on the next arrow, and this takes us into the transformations, and this is how we start to move things and animate things around in After Effects. So if we wanted this piece of footage to slowly move across the screen, we could change the position. And I can, as I move it, you can see how the box is affecting the screen, and you can see how this indicates that there's more footage over here, right? So I can start here, and then if I want to start moving it, I have to click the stopwatch. I can turn it on. That means it's turned on. You can see this right here. And this is a keyframe. And now if I move over maybe 6 seconds, I could push this over. Now you see we have this line which indicates that there's an animation that's happening. Kind of hard to tell because this is like a somewhat non-concrete piece of footage. But maybe if we move this to like 2 seconds instead, we'll get more of a read that it's traveling. You can see that it's traveling even if the footage doesn't really indicate that, because it is just kind of like this abstract reflection of water, but we see it's moving across. So over here in our project panel is where we can look at our compositions and our footage. And I'm gonna change this, if I click on a composition and then hit return or enter, I can rename it, so I can just say water if I wanted to. But what we could also do is I'm gonna delete that position change, and I'm gonna take the frog, put the frog in our composition. Now, maybe I want to do the track mat or the track mats that we were looking at. So alpha mats and luma mats. So there's a couple ways we could do this. This one is going to use a luma mat because of the fact that we are dealing with black and white values. If we had a Photoshop file with transparency and alpha and it didn't have the white section, we just had the sort of like cutout of the frog, then we were using alpha. But we'll use Luma, and let's see Luma. Okay, so if we want the frog to be filled, we're going to say Luma inverted. But we're also getting this issue of all this extra space, right? So in order to get rid of that, basically what I would need to do is either have this piece of this frog, this footage of the frog, have the white extend all the way to the sides, or I could come in here and I can put a mat on my water. So I'm going to take this track mat off real fast, turn my frog back on, and I'm going to add a mask to the water layer. You can see how the mask initially reads. If I come up here to my pen tool, that's what's going to allow me to grab more points on the mask. If I click and hold, I can pull out the Bezier handles and add curves. And I can click and drag these to where I want them. So I'm gonna bring this down to the frog. Now, for some reason, this is kind of annoying. I know that there's a shortcut for this, but I can't remember what it is. But if I come down to masks and I select the mask, and then I try and start clicking on it, you'll see it's dragging the entire mask. So if I come into mask and I hit mask path, it's still doing that. And that look, these pieces of these vertices are solid colored boxes. But if I click on mask feather, you can see that the vertices, they're now hollow boxes. That's what I want, and that's how I can click on them and drag them and actually like move in individual vertices versus the whole box. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to move my mask, and I'm just going to set it to where my Luma is. And now if I do Luma inverted, we just have the frog right there, right? So if I want to, let's talk a little bit about parenting. So I'm sorry, about pre-composing and adding compositions and things like that. So right now, if I want these things to move together, if I was to come in here and I was to move my frog, it moves off of the space where our mask is, right? So I want to make sure that they're together. So I could do a couple things. One thing that I could do is I could parent them. So this little pick whip right here, this will, if I click this and I drag this up to the frog, now when I move my frog, the water stays with it. And so that's basically saying like anything that this frog does, this water is also going to do. So that's a good strategy. Another way to do that, if you didn't want to pick whip it, if you like pre-composition. So pre-compositions are like making a stack of folders, and so you put everything in a folder, and then you can move the folder around altogether. So I'm going to select these two objects, and I can right click them and say pre-compose. And now I'll say frog. And typically when we pre-compose, I want to make sure that this option, move all attributes to the new composition, is selected. And I'll hit OK. So now you can see that made our layers, it turned it into one. And also if we click and drag, the water stays with the frog. And this is just as good. Kind of depends on how you like to work. Now, if you like to pre-compose, then what you're going to do here is we're going to double click on the frog. Then we're going to go inside the frog. And you can also see that frog is another composition that's added up here. And so now we can make any changes that we want to the frog, but we basically are doing it inside of this folder. And all of our folders, which are compositions, they start to line up right here. We can close them with this. So I'm back in my main comp. I'm back in my main comp, and I'd probably rename this to something that makes more sense. I would probably call this full comp. And this is kind of like what everything is sort of going to lead back to eventually, basically, is that full comp. And we can remember, as I make more pre-compositions, I might do that down here and kind of like change the names and things like that. So what I could do in here is I could make a solid or a shape layer. Those are really great strategies for working in After Effects. So if I wanted just a solid color, I could come here up to layer, new, I could say shape layer, and that will work. So I get this menu up here at the top, and I get a new layer right here. I'm going to drag this underneath, and then the rectangle is usually the thing that is automatically selected. I can click and I can drag to make a rectangle if I want to. I'm going to Command Z, or if I want to, I can use the pen tool, and I could come in here and make a shape. You can see up here I have my controls for the stroke and the fill. So if I want stroke, I can bump that up. If I don't, I can take it all the way down. Fill, I can change my color. It could be cool to like make a lily pad or something, I don't know. So we could do a couple things. We could start this over with position over here, and then move it to the other side. And I can change those properties down there, or I could just click and drag. And I could also take my position of my lily pad and maybe have it move the opposite direction or something like that. The last little thing that I will show you. So, okay, we could do more than just change the position. We could also come in here and change the scale. We could change the rotation. So let's have our frog rotate. With position, there's oftentimes these little handles that we could grab, which could sort of help change the path of our position if we wanted. So our frog could make more of a leap. And let's actually take the scale down. And right now we have transparency, so that's good. If we didn't want to keep the transparency on, if we just wanted to see black, we can toggle this switch on and off. And one last little thing, the effects, adding effects. So we've looked at effects briefly, but over here is the effects and preset. If you have that in your menu, you might not have that in your interface for some reason. If not, you can always come here to and right click, control, and then I'm sorry, right click or option, no, right click control, I'm sorry, and then say effects. You could kind of find your effect in here. I think it's fun to usually start with color correction. That's an interesting way to work with effects. So we could look for color correction, hue saturation. And so an effect is going to come up here and next to the project panel. So I can move back and forth between my effect on this layer or my project panel just by clicking these tabs. So in the effect controls, I can change the color of my frog, and I can do the exact same thing that I did with the keyframes for the position and the scale. I can change them over time. So I can hit this stopwatch and then pick a new position. We'll come here to the end with the frog disappearing, and I want to have it rotate around one full time. So I could do that. I could slide the slider, or I could literally just type in 1. You see how that changed? So 0, and then it doesn't update till we I guess get to the position, but or I can click down here. Yeah, there we see. So you can see the frogs changing colors. So that might be a good way for you to start doing some composition work. What we could also do is if I want to, so this is my full comp. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pre-comp this again. And I'll say frog pre-comp. And now what I could do is I could maybe if I wanted to, I could make a bunch of these. I could put this here, and then if I do Command C, Command V, that makes a new copy. So I can slide this over and put that there. Command C, Command V. Another copy. Command C, Command V. Another copy. So now I have 4 frogs jumping at once. And we can start to play with ideas of delay. So I've just slid these files down slightly. And we see how that affects it. This is one way that I really like to start exploring, and I think it's a great way for you all who might not be as familiar with After Effects to start messing around in some of these ways. I hope this helps some, and I'm definitely able to provide more details about anything specific that you all want.